Good evening, class, and welcome back to another night of plumbing classroom. Okay, tonight what I'd like to do is to go over the questions that I assigned for last week, which was chapter 24. And if you could go to those questions, and let's see how we made out. Okay, now I looked these up myself, so there's a chance that I made a mistake. So in any case, if you find one that you're quite sure that is not correct, by all means, please let me know. I don't want to be putting out some foolishness, especially if you got an answer that's right and mine it is not. So, okay, let's take a look. Now, I did go over this chapter in general last week, and I do have a few notes, but I'll save that for the end of the chapter. I did not ask you to do the suggested activities at the very end of this chapter, right after the questions. I went into it a bit, and I got some more information, but we'll save that. Okay, so let's do the questions. Question number 1. The system of pipes designed to dispose of rainwater, excess rainwater, is known as D, the storm sewer. Okay, now remember, just a quick refresher, in the city of Fall River and most of these old cities around here, it's a combined system. And the book does mention that briefly. A combined system means the stormwater and the sanitary water coming out of the house, the drains out of the house, all join together and go somewhere. Usually it's to always these days, it's to a treatment plant. I don't think there's anywhere that allows water to go straight into the ocean or the river or whatever. Okay, so when we're dealing with rainwater, it's called storm sewer. Okay, that was on, by the way, that was on page 4. Let's take a look. It's a very short chapter anyway. So let's take a look on page 419. And okay, it's pretty general. First column, they're talking about a storm sewer or a dry well. Okay, now because of the water going to a lot of water coming down, I've never seen the stormwater going into a septic system. Excuse me. A dry well, yes, if it's only for this, that's where it usually goes to. Talk about that later. But the answer was stormwater. Question number 2. Water collected in foundation drains that are below the level of the storm sewer. Now, remember, why didn't I put an answer on that one? Okay, that one's going to go into a sump. And for some reason, I didn't write down where that came from. Okay, this is on page 421. And it's called, should be pumped by a sump pump. All right, foundation drain groundwater goes into a sump that has to be pumped. This is the first column, page 421, about a little more than halfway down the page, just above where it says code note. It says to install a sump pump to remove the groundwater. All right, this is not common. Now, I was never a builder. I was around a lot of houses, but I was not a builder. And I don't remember any that had to pump the water from around the foundation up and out. I'm sure there's some out there, but I don't believe it's too common around here. Okay, so that was what, page 421? Was number 2. Number 3. Let's see. True or false? The pipe used for foundation drains is perforated to permit groundwater to enter the pipe. Yes, and I discussed that last week. And those of you who've done new houses have probably seen this. As I remember, it's been a long time. There's a 4-inch sewer and drain pipe. Remember, Schedule 20 is sewer and drain. Schedule 40 is PVC. This is that thin stuff that just slips together. It also comes without holes or with holes. They always use with holes around the foundation, so it goes all the way around the foundation. And they call it here a French drain, although I don't remember that name out in the trade. I believe they call it a perimeter drain. Anyway, just visualize it. You got a footing. Next to the footing, right alongside the footing on the outside, we have this perimeter drain. And I did discuss that last week. New houses, it's always on the outside. in a remodeling job where you've got an old house with a serious water problem in the basement, somebody wants to go to the trouble, they'll have an inside perimeter drain where it goes around from the inside of the house, which means you got to dig up the entire perimeter of the house floor, the floor of the basement, to do this. Very, very messy. I imagine it's quite expensive. But if you've got a water problem, that's how they usually handle it. Let's see. That was also on page 422. That was number 3. Number 4, the size of the downspout from a gutter that collects water from a roof, 1,450 square feet in area, should not be less than. Okay, if you go to the chart on page 421, let's do that. Okay, the answer is 3. Let's go to the chart on page 421. And let's see, where was that? 450 square feet on the vertical chart. The vertical chart is at the top of the page. I highlighted the word vertical on that page. And very much like the one in your code book, I did not compare the numbers to see if the allowance for like the square footage is the same from Mass to, I think it was Ohio, where this book was put together. In any case, 1,450 square feet. Take a look. Top of the page. 720 is 2-inch. 2,200 is 3-inch. It's a little bit. It's actually right in between 2 and 3, which of course makes it 3-inch. Okay. So number 4 comes from page 421 on the chart, top of the page. Number 5. If the slope of the pipe is 1/4 inch to the foot, which is all we've worked with up till now, and the roof being drained is 3,150 square feet, what size pipe? Okay, let's go take a look on the chart. The second chart down, they mentioned pitch, and you'll see 1/4 inch, just like our chart from Massachusetts, middle of the page, middle of that page, it's 1/4 inch. Okay, so we're looking at 3,150. 3,150 is between 2,650 and 47. All right, it's too big for the 26, which would have been 4-inch. And it's small enough that 5-inch can handle it quite easily. Because 5-inch goes all the way up to over 4,000. So the answer to number 5 is 5-inch. And there it is right there on page 421. Okay, number 6. A concrete driveway that slopes towards the house is 20 feet wide and 50 feet long. What diameter pipe should be used to carry the water from the trench drain if the pipe is installed with a slope of 1 1/4. Excuse me. I need a magnifying glass. These glasses aren't strong enough. All right, they're still using 1/4 inch foot. So what we're looking at is 20 times 50. Okay, I think you can all do the math there. That's 1,000 square feet. Okay, let's go back to that chart, page 421. Now they're mentioning pitch, so that means we're going to the second chart down, the horizontal chart, right? It says horizontal right under it. Let's go to that center column and look at the first one, 3-inch. 3-inch can handle 1,160. 1,160. We only needed 1,000, so 3-inch looks good. Okay, 3-inch drain looks adequate. Okay, now what I haven't mentioned is most of this stuff really isn't plumbing, right? A drain that they're talking about, number 7, would be a drain that would be like installed across the driveway where it goes into the basement. Now, if you have a basement or a garage, kind of like a raised ranch where half of it is like a garage, and it pitches back towards the house. Now, the only reason a contractor would have done that is because if they had no choice. But that French drain, if you want to call it that runs across the driveway to pick up the water is very risky. If it ever blocks up, that water will go right into the basement. Also, again, it's not plumbing. I have never been involved with this in any way. Okay, this is strictly up to the contractor to take care of this business. However, they do put it in this plumbing book, and like I say, I have it from some night school questions. So apparently, I guess with those night school questions, it has popped up from time to time. The good news is, if you get any of these questions like this here, like this whole chapter, you will be given charts. Right? You're not expected to memorize any charts. However, the bad news is, if there's any formulas involved, which I don't believe there was in this particular chapter, that's on you. You got to learn all the formulas. All right, they do not give you formulas. At least they never did in my time. So you're gonna have to learn them, and we're going to be doing those in the next video. In fact, I might be doing a bit in this video because we're going to wrap this one up a little earlier. Okay, at the end of that chapter, they get into suggested activities. Now, the suggested activities are, I'll read it. Using a set of drawings. If you have your question sheet there, your quiz sheet, at the end of that, it says suggested activities, which I didn't ask you to do anything with. So just read along with me. Using a set of drawings for a house, calculate the diameter of the leaders needed to collect the runoff from the roof. Now, probably all of you, or certainly the majority of you, are familiar with prints. Residential house prints are always quarters to the foot. One time I saw prints that were a weird size, like it wasn't a quarter, it was like 3/8, 3/16. I don't know, it was some off the wall. It was such a pain to work with. I don't know where they came from. My guess is you're never going to see that. Plan on 1/4 inch per foot for a private home. A small commercial building, probably the same. Now, once the building gets to a certain size, 1/4 inch prints are just not going to work because the building is too big. For example, let's say you had a building like a mill that was 200 feet long, which some of them are. Some of the mills in the city are really big. And like an Amazon building, forget it, that's like 1/4 of a mile long. But let's just take an old mill that's 200 feet. Well, 100 foot would be 25 inches, right? 1/4 inch to the foot. A 200 foot mill would be 50 inches. That's big. That's bigger than the print, right? So what they're going to have to do is change the print size to 1/8 inch to the foot. And which of course means you can put a much bigger building on a small piece of paper, but the trade-off is you lose detail. You can't see much detail on 1/8 inch, especially. And I know some of you guys have worked a lot with blueprints for commercial buildings where you're probably working off 1/8 inch. If you get into an area where you need detail, they'll have to take that area and blow it up. Now, at the residential level, we're kind of lucky because 1/4 inch is usually enough for us to get by. A little tricky in a bathroom where you're working with a vanity and a water closet. You got to be really careful because even a 1/4 inch scale, just a 1/16 of an inch is 3 inches, right? That changes the center of the toilet. You can get yourself in trouble, especially if nobody catches it before the tile goes down, right? And then you got a big problem. You can't hide that 3 inches. Okay, in a house, the only time you see detail, usually it's not for us, it's for the carpenters or the cabinet installers. Sometimes usually the carpenters. So they'll make a 1 inch to the foot for just the kitchen, for the sink base and the overhead cabinets and all that. They need the detail, right? They can use it. And just taking one room, you can blow that up and put it on, regular print. Okay. So what I did here is to take a look at that one problem they gave. One horizontal pipe, 5 inch diameter for a roof. That's actually a huge roof. That's bigger than most houses, 3,100 square feet. That was number 5. Now they mentioned another one, a driveway that was that was 20 by 50. Now take that driveway. Now remember, whether it's on the ground or up on the roof, doesn't matter. It's still area that's got to be drained. Okay, let's make that the front of a big house, 50-foot long house with a roof that's 20 feet from the peak to right where the gutter is, right? That's a very big house, I think you all agree. and that's 1,000 square feet. That was number 6. That was only a 3-inch pipe. 3-inch pipe went up to 11 and change, right? Now think about the downspout on that. I think you've all fooled around with roofs, whether it's your own, your parents, or whatever, cleaning leaves and stuff out. Nearly all roofs have a downspout at either end, right? Usually not in the middle, at either end. Now the downspout in a modern house is what it looks maybe 2 by 3, roughly the size. So it's more than big enough to carry the water down. One of those should be able to carry the water down, but it's probably a good idea that you got both. You got two, because I think we've all seen a rainstorm where water will come right over the gutter. But again, not our trade, just interesting. If you ever get your own place, um, keep an eye on the gutters. I've had houses and the leaves will block them up. And if you got wooden gutters, better keep them really cleaned up because they rot out, and they will completely rot out. And to replace the wooden gutters with wood, it's gonna, unless you're rich, you're probably not gonna want to do it. Most likely you're going to be using aluminum or some kind of vinyl. Okay, let's move on. I'm getting off the plumbing end of it here. All right, they mentioned number 2. Go to the plumber supply company, find out about sump pumps. Now I talked to you about this last class. 2 kind of sump pumps. The cheaper one is, I call it a pedestal. It's the one that stands about 30 inches high. And you can put that right on, I forgot to mention this last class, you can actually put that right on the floor. And it really pumps down close to the floor, right? It's nice. It's better if it's in a sump, meaning a pit. Sump is a fancy name for a pit. And the best pit is one, you don't put it in the dirt. Try to put at least some thin cement blocks, like 2 by 8 by 16, like solid cement block. They're really only 1.5 inches thick. So at least put a couple of those down. It's better to build a whole pit with like open jointed. No, don't cement it in where it's like waterproof. Then it's like, it's like some kind of Three Stooges thing. It keeps the water from coming in the pit. What you want is like open joints all the way around, so the water can get in there. But the pedestal type usually sits inside the sump pit, and then there's one that actually works on the surface. Okay, I've seen them, but I never put one in. And if I remember right, their standard drain size is 1.25 inches, which you could just, 1.25 inches, like male adapt, and blow it right up to 1.5 inches. 1.25 inch pipe is expensive. If you want to go with 1.25 inch, knock yourself out. But once you get outside, if you're pumping it outside, I would say the bigger pipe, the better. The less chance that this thing ices up, right? They do ice up, right? They get, whether it's snow and it turns to slush that freezes, whatever. Um, the last thing you want is a sump pump that's not going to work when you need it. Okay, the other sump pump I talked about was a submersible sump pump. Okay, this is the one that is out of sight. It goes in a pit. And I did tell you about lining it with cement brick or cement blocks. Cement brick is actually the best. And then you cut a plywood cover and recess the plywood cover to sit on the cement blocks you put in there, so it's flush with the floor. Looks pretty slick. Nice job. You get a good, not a day's pay, but you can get at least a couple of hours out of that. And pipe it up and out. Okay? Don't cheat with the pitch. Get it outside and give it some pitch. I wouldn't recommend going with 1/8 inch. You want this water to whip right through there and out the other end, or wherever it's going to. If it's going to a sump or whatever, but get the water with pretty good pitch on that pipe. Okay, sump pumps. By the way, nothing that I've mentioned today requires a plumbing license. Right, the stuff you guys can all do legally without a license. Now the pipe surrounding the foundation we talked about last week is a 4-inch Schedule 20, as I recall, sewer and drain. All right, this is one pipe that just slides into the other. This one end is swedged. You just slip it in, and that's it. It's got the holes so it picks up the water in around the foundation. So if you got a problem, the water will go through the holes and run around the foundation. Right? Again, we got nothing to do with this. This is installed by usually the contractor. Okay, and and then it goes away from the house. Now I never really, I was always so busy I didn't have time to fool around with what the other guys were doing, but I kind of remember it went around the foundation and then it went away from the house, like off a T or a TY to some kind of like a dry well. Now the book mentions a sump pump pumping it uphill to a stormwater system, which of course we don't have in this area anyway. It goes to a combined system, and no town or city wants you adding new stormwater like a new house into the system, right? They got enough problem dealing with the water they're getting. My guess is they're not going to let you do it. That's as a contract. As a plumber, we don't care about this stuff. But it's a good chapter. It's a nice background, kind of like well pumps. I'd say the well pump's a little more important because you will do well pumps, but you're not going to be doing this. Okay, so we're looking at Schedule 20 pipe around the foundation. They call it French drain. I think I remember it called a perimeter drain. If you know of another name, you boss people call it, let us know. And I want to get into something else here because we're probably not going to talk about foundations again. It's not that I think of. Going back to the very early part of this semester, back around October, when I was separating the classes, that's when I'm not sure who I could study it and figure it out, but I'm not sure if I covered it with both of you. We have a little bit of information on concrete. Green concrete. Remember what green concrete is? It's just a name for concrete that has not reached maximum hardness. Now, regular concrete takes about 30 days to cure above ground. Now, there is construction, super high strength concrete they use for buildings, bridges, things like that. And trust me, I tried drilling through it once. It was like, might as well trying to drill a piece of steel. It was like, I was going, no. I got through it. I ended up doing, that was when I was much, much younger. It took me 6 hours, and I ended up doing it by hand. My electric hammer wouldn't do it. And it was 4,000 psi concrete. Regular construction concrete is somewhere around 2,500 pounds per square inch, the capacity. I mean, the strength before it explodes, which I've seen in a test when I took my students up towards Boston. We went to a place that actually tested the concrete, and they put it and they press it, and when it explodes, when it blows apart, it registers, and that's all they can tell if it meets the standards for the job. Now, the residential level, the concrete we use, it's okay, it's adequate, but we don't send it out to be tested. And you guys that have all chopped concrete know that you can get through it with electric hammer, core drill if you're lucky. But one suggestion I have is, if you have a choice, as soon as they take the forms off the wall, get yourself over there and make your hole, as long as you know where you're going, because the concrete is softer. Right? You can tell the difference. You wait 30 days, you lost it. Okay, so as soon as they strip the forms, you're there. Another thing, now this I didn't mention to you at all. You go into a house with some concrete that's just poured. You can walk on it the second day, but I don't advise it. And when you walk on new concrete, like a day old, don't work off it because you're going to get in trouble, especially if that floor is going to be finished. Walk flat footed, completely flat footed. Do not pivot. If you pivot, dig your heel in, you do anything, it's going to show up. You can ding this stuff with your fingernail. It's soft. You can flat foot if you have to. If you absolutely have to, like, go check something or do something minor. That's my advice. You want to take it, fine. If you don't, you got to walk on it or do something. Put something over the concrete, like a sheet of plywood, anything, right? Protect it. And then, like, every day after that, it gets that much hotter. And it's been many years since I've been involved with it, but there comes a point after several days, you're pretty safe. You drop something and it digs in, like the point of your tubing cutter, right? Something that can, it will make a ding in the concrete even after a few days. But be careful walking on new concrete. But the walls, once they strip the walls, right, it takes, I don't know how long they leave those forms up. A couple of days probably. As soon as they strip it, that's when you're in there. Make your hole. Okay. Couple things, couple last notes on these basements. One of them is, and some of you guys might have done this. I did one radiant heat job when it first came out about 20 years ago. Maybe a little more than that. And I put it under a plywood floor. Wait, excuse me. On a plywood floor with strips of ferron between the rows of pipe. And then I think it was hardwood over that. And underneath it all, there was some 2-inch hard foam, high density, high R value. Okay, that went under that. It was actually between the joists, and it was, I forgot the carpenter. I didn't put it in. The carpenter put in the insulation. I think he used like big, like railroad spikes, like 16 penny nails, and he sat the insulation on that and wedged it in there. One thing about radiant, for those of you who haven't done it, the radiant only works properly when you have insulation in back of it. So if it was in the floor, even on concrete, they put down the foam board, and then the radiant pipe attached to the foam, if I remember. I didn't do this now. Be attached to it, and then they pour it. They actually can pour on that foam. That way, any of the heat, because radiant heat is not like regular baseboard heat. It doesn't just rise up. It radiates in all directions equally. So if you got the insulation in back of it, it hits the insulation and bounces off, so it would head straight up. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have done radiant in a ceiling. If I remember, I will ask you when we go live. But radiant also was in a ceiling. Now, when I was an inspector, I remember inspecting some radiant in the ceiling, but it was electric radiant. It was like strips. It almost looked like wire going. It was just wire going back and forth with, I believe, there was insulation above it. And I was checking it out because, believe it or not, I was an electric inspector also. It was all rolled into one. Anyway, so radiant, like our radiant, hot water radiant, in the ceiling, you would have the insulation up there first, and you would be actually looking at the pipe, the radiant pipe, before you put sheetrock or whatever over it, usually sheetrock. Now, the last place you can put it, you don't usually see this, but you could, maybe like in a bathroom, you could put it in a wall, right? Again, put the baseboard, the insulation in back of it, and it would radiate straight out through the wall. Now, radiant can go under like a floor, like an existing floor with a finish and a subfloor. And I haven't been involved with that, but what they do is, I believe they put it up and staple it, clip it right to the floor, existing floor, and then they put the insulation up between the bays, right? Done. 2 inches the foam. And I believe they have to run it a little warmer to get through the 2 layers of wood. Okay, but it can be done. Last thing I want to mention to do with concrete is radon gas. I think I mentioned this in another class, but if I did, fine. If I didn't, I'll tell you right now. Radon is a gas that causes cancer. I believe it's lung cancer. And you're going to say, that's not around here. That's somewhere else. Not really. When I was inspecting a house one time in Little Compton, I went to the basement, and there's a hole in the sill, right above the sill, right in the bay between it, like a 4-inch hole, like a dryer size hole. And there was an electric motor running. I wondered, what's that about? And somebody said, that's the house has a high level of radon gas. And because of that, they have to run this electric fan 24 hours a day. In other words, nonstop, never shuts off. It was quiet enough. But, you got a situation where the radon gas is above the acceptable limit. And you got to run this fan. I don't know if I really want to buy that house. Okay. Most houses don't have radon at a level that's a problem. Now, I had an old house had a dirt basement. Half of it was dirt, and the other half was just I think they call it a rat slab. It's like a thin layer of concrete with nothing underneath it, maybe 1 inch or 2 thick, a lot of cracks in it. So, and big stones for the wall, just like the old house in the city. So there was a lot of places for the radon gas to come in. By the way, radon gas in a new house, it comes in like through the sump, right? Wherever there's like cracks in the foundation or a hole in the floor, then you can get radon gas. Now, the way they measure radon gas, and I remember getting a test kit, it looked like an oversized shoe shine can. This is about at least 25 years ago. And what you do is you put it like 2 feet above the floor in the basement, and you pop the cover off and leave it there for like 24, 48 hours. Put the cover back on, and then they send a special tape, you seal it up, put it in this self-addressed like pouch thing, and off it goes. And the results I got back were not bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't low as I would like it, but it was somewhere between don't worry about it and you better start thinking about it. But it wasn't dangerous. I didn't have to put a fan in or anything. And it was also in the basement, which is strictly storage, so nobody really hanging out down there. Uh, so even in a house where you need this fan, upstairs would not be as bad if there was any radon. Okay, so that's the good news. But radon is something that they actually have like disclosure form for a house, right? So check that out. Now, I did have a house with ghosts in it, and that's not on the disclosure form. But a realtor told me that had they known there was, although this was a realtor that didn't sell my house, if they know there's like spirits or something, they feel obligated to tell the owner, but it's not in writing. Okay, moving on. So much for the ghost stories. All right, we're coming up on 30 minutes, which is really just about what I wanted to do. And again, you won't be able to ask me questions on this stuff because you're going to be seeing this after we have our in-person meeting. Okay. In any case, I'm going to wrap this up. It's only 30 minutes, and I'll start the other the video in a little while, and we'll do that chapter on math. That was chapter 4 that I'm going to be starting, which is a lot more involved than this one here. Okay, I will see you soon.